God is love, and love is a verb, right? So it needs to be practiced. It's not just something that you check off and that's that. So what you put in, you also get out in one way or another, right? You might not immediately see it yourself, but it will actually develop your character and develop yourself. Hi, ik ben Cornelis, kom uit Nederland en ik ben op dit moment op weg naar Santiago de Compostela. So I'm Cornelis and I'm from the Netherlands and I'm on my way to Santiago de Compostela on a pilgrimage.
Cornelius, do you believe that Jesus is alive and active?
Very much so, yes, very much so. With every breath I take, right? Yeah, yeah.
What makes you believe in such a thing?
For me, that's been a long time of cultivating prayer to really absorb that reality within yourself. For me, it's really it's something very subtle, right? The existence of God is the most elemental, the most fundamental thing, but it's also the most subtle thing. So it's so easy to not notice it, and at least for me, it takes a lot of work in a way to see it. It's right there in the silence, but you need to create that silence. You know, it's just silence is not good enough. It needs to be holy silence, and you need to create it within yourself.
Do you feel like you've been encountering God on this trip?
Yes, and I think most people here will say, of course, I meet so many people. I meet Jesus in everyone I meet, and that's true. But actually, the majority of my pilgrimage has been really in solitude, because I started in the Netherlands and only really encountered other pilgrims in Spain. So for me, it's been a rediscovery of some of the things I experienced in monastic life, where what I said earlier about sort of the subtlety of God's existence in everything, and it's Elijah, right, who asks God to if he can see him, and then God goes by in a sort of in a huff of air. That basically to me has been sort of the key meditation on this trip, to walk out of cities and stop hearing human noise and walk into nature, and you hear the birds and the trees and hear animals and whatnot, but then to even hear beyond that, to just hear the wind basically, and within that find God. I know I have.
What would you describe your upbringing, your childhood? How would you describe growing up, your parents? Feel free to go in as much detail as you want or don't want to.
Well, I think it's fairly typical for the Netherlands in the 90s. It was it's a very free mentality where the attitude is like, well, you should decide for yourself what you want to believe. You should decide for yourself what you are, how you want to shape your life, and unfortunately, that usually means that people don't make any choice, right? Especially such a fundamental thing as religion, which you kind of get in high school, but because you get it in class, then it's very uncool immediately. So forget about it. And so for me, it's been an sort of a journey that started around my 20s. When I became 20, I just noticed that there were certain things that I realized on some level about life, but didn't really have the kind of words to describe or to really grasp. And it was and that started the long journey of finding out, like, how do you shape your religious needs, and how do you give that body.
What was what would you say was the way? How did you come to Christ?
Well, so a very classical way, actually. the word of God made me come to faith. You can see the hand of God, I think, in it. So I went to study in Montreal in 2009, and I packed my things, and I just packed books that were related to my studies, but there was only one book that I packed that was in Dutch, my native tongue, of course, and that was like this pocket Bible that I had gotten actually in high school when a teacher was walking with a huge box and said, "Oh, can I have one?" And he was ready to throw them out or something. So I unpacked in Montreal, and I found this little pocket Bible, and I was like, did I pack this? Okay. And then I was reading about early Christian spirituality or early Christian mysticism, studying religious studies. And there was a note in there that said, like, well, if you want to know about that, you need to start with Acts and then the letters, and only then go back to the Gospels. That's what I did, and for me that was really the key that unlocked basically the Gospel. Yeah. And it really it also comes with all these providential meetings. Maybe I hope this is something that you have had yourself, that at these crucial moments in your life you meet people that unbeknownst to themselves play this very important role for you, that sort of nudge you in the right direction. You know.
So, can you give us an example of a time that there was a person who spoke into your life or directed you in your faith in such a way that it made a big impact, even if they didn't realize it?
Yeah, so I remember from my time in Montreal, I met these few men who had this Bible breakfast club, and I joined them, and one of them just very offhandedly said something like, "Oh, if you're in doubt, then just pray, God, I don't know if you exist, but if you do, then speak to me, and I will promise that I will listen." And it sort of, it's a very simple prayer, but it was very effective. For some reason, that really was a very important thing to me. Yeah, I think that time in particular was just a very rich providential time, and from what I understand, that can be quite typical in a way, and it can also be quite typical that once you have sort of come to faith in a more mature way, then this time of drought basically starts, which I also experienced a little. Yeah, I myself was also a little worried, like you get really antsy about it, like I'm doing something wrong maybe. And this priest that I offered this question to, he just said like, "Oh, well, sounds like this just a period of, of less sort of intense spiritual experience, but it comes and goes." Oh, okay.
So now that you've come to Christ and you've weathered a season of difficulty of some sort, has there been a time since then that there was doubt in your faith?
That's a good question. Sort of rewinding the movie. Not that much. You see, I've developed my faith as far as living in a monastery for 4 years. So it's always been a quite intense experience for me, and also very intense investment on my part. Like I really did a lot with it, and um, God is love, and love is a verb, right? So it needs to be practiced. It's not just something that you check off and that's that. So what you put in, you also get out in one way or another, right? You might not immediately see it yourself, but it will actually develop your character and develop yourself. But I'm gonna turn it around if you don't mind. Yeah. So in 2020, I suffered a really great loss in my family because of Corona, and I had to really step in there, and I really had to kind of take control over things in the family, and sort of really carry everyone through, and that just came out of nowhere, right? All of a sudden I noticed, like, oh, I'm the mature adult now here in the room that needs to take charge of this situation, and this emotional meltdown happened in front of my eyes, where the entire family was just completely shaken, and you could really think of that. There was 2 weeks of so much emotion, so much negativity, of course, right? And you would think that it really makes you doubt whether God exists, because so much suffering right in front of your eyes, right? Like literally a body in a casket right there with a weeping family. That's your family also. And strangely enough, it didn't. It had the opposite effect. Like I experienced the reality of God and of Jesus stronger maybe than ever, in a way. And like I said, that cultivation of prayer, that prayer life, I thought to myself at several moments during those 2 weeks, like, oh, this is what I've been cultivating that prayer for, because I keep on finding the right words to say just a snippet of a psalm or a song or a prayer. And lots of people there, they weren't religious, they weren't Christian, but everyone's without words. Everyone's just speechless. And here are some words to give expression to that. And it was just very unexpected, just how real God can be, even when things are at an all-time low. Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
at the same time, it does seem like that God's faithful. A blessing and a time of sorrow. Do you feel like God has given you some type of calling?
So I have heard the calling in a very specific technical sense, as it is known in the Catholic Church, a calling to religious life, a vocation, really. And I've experienced that, and I've also experienced that sometimes life takes another turn, where all of a sudden you're asked to help out your family, and you have to leave the monastery behind, basically. So going on this pilgrimage, as I'm doing now, to Santiago de Compostela, and taking 2 months to be on the road with myself and with God, is really a time to reflect on, if that wasn't my vocation, then what might it be? Or what is going to be the next phase of my life? I feel like I've spent a fair amount already on my family, and I think I did I'm relieved, I'm happy that I was able to help them. And perhaps that was my entire vocation, right? Perhaps I can just sort of retire from now on. But people keep telling me there's lots more for me, so.
What made you decide to go that direction? And then 4 years is a long time. did you go into it knowing it was going to be that long?
Yeah, so it was a long time of preparation because I think it was a long period where I gradually sort of realized that that this could be the right thing for me, that this could be really a happy place. But one particular order just kept coming back and back, basically, in my life, and so eventually I knocked on their door, and it seems like an enormous step, but in that process, it's all just baby steps, and it's just looking back that you consider it to be a big step. But once you enter, for you as a person, it's not a big step at all. It's the most logical thing. It would be very strange not to take that step at that point, right? It's always layered, no matter which order, no matter which monastery you go to. There's always going to be a period where you're just there and you're free to go. Doors right there, you can walk through it. And they can also ask you to leave if they think it's not a right fit. Let's say usually it takes about a year, and then you commit, but you commit for a period of time. You commit for, say, 3 years is quite a usual length. And so then that means you make vows, right? So then you vow to be in the order, but the order also vows to be with you and to take care of you. Those vows can then be extended, and eventually you can make a solemn vows, and then you would be in the order for the rest of your life. Again, a lot of people think of it as like, oh, you make this one decision of entering and now you're there for the rest of your life, but that's not the practice, because that's inhuman, really. Yeah.
I've read a little bit of history on the early church and how monasteries were a place of refuge during really hard times through history, and almost single-handedly were able to save the faith by recording the New Testament over and over. Basically monasteries alone are the reason why we have Christianity today, because of the medieval times, the barbarians, warfare, famine, the Black Plague. It sounds interesting. Why would someone such as yourself, like maybe you can give an exact example, what purpose or place does it play in the Christian walk?
Yeah, I see. There's one sort of way of expressing it that I kind of like. Someone said, like, it's like seeing someone at the bus stop. They're just there, they're just standing, they're doing absolutely nothing, but at least you know, like, oh, the bus hasn't come yet, the bus will be coming soon. It's kind of that's a lot of the purpose of a monastery, is to be a sign that the kingdom is really to come, that it's really true, it's really, it's real.
Do you have anything to say to someone who has heard about Jesus but maybe hasn't made that decision?
If you are undecided about whether you want to believe in God or want to follow Jesus, then I think it's already interesting that you've been watching this until the end, that you've been watching this video until this point. So there's some interest there, right? There's no denying that there's something that's just an itch that you need to scratch, and that's going to come back again and again. It's interesting to be in that place, right? To learn about Christianity, but to be outside of it yet, to sort of look from the outside in. And oftentimes I think what I see with people who are like this, who are so interested that they keep on watching a video like this, and talk to people, usually in a very combative manner, right? It's that they still have some shield up somewhere, and they still they find it hard to let go of their self. And that's kind of the essence of Christianity, that you do let go of yourself, in the sense that God really wants you totally, your good and your bad sides, right? You do not. Maybe you should be on some level ashamed of certain bad parts of yourself, or work on them or whatnot, but you need not be ashamed of them in front of God. In fact, it is, if you manage to take that step, to lay bare all your mistakes and all your fragility in front of God, it's only then that you've truly opened up, and that God will also sort of open up.
Well, thank you for doing this interview. And if you want, you can finish on explaining the flag if you have time.
Yeah, sure. Should I? So I've been carrying around this flag on my back across Europe, and it's a lamb. It's the Lamb of God, and that's a symbol for He who takes away the sins of the world, right? A lamb that is slaughtered. And it's a symbol for Christ. And in this case, we can see his fur is made up of the shells of the way of St. James, and he's stepping forward, and he's holding the banner of Christianity, you might say, and that's a symbol for Christ resurrected, and Christ leading the pilgrim church here on earth towards the heavenly kingdom. So Christ still as an image of a lamb, as a very meek and humble creature, but sort of daftly stepping forward in front of everyone else, showing us the way. And I and many other here on the Camino de Santiago are also on the way. So it's a celebration of Easter, but hopefully also a reminder of to follow the way. Buen camino.